There are moments in life when holding on feels safer than letting go. We cling to what's familiar, relationships, habits, plans, even pain, because they've become our comfort zone. But there comes a time when God whispers, let go. Not because he wants to leave us empty, but because he's ready to fill us with something greater. Letting go is not a sign of weakness. It's a sign of trust. It's the moment when your faith speaks louder than your fear. God doesn't tell you to release what's in your hand unless he's ready to place something better there. When he says let go, he's not taking from you. He's preparing you. When God says let go, he's calling you into obedience. It's easy to obey when the path is clear, but true obedience shines when the road fades into uncertainty. You don't always understand his plan, but you're called to follow his voice. Remember Abraham, called to leave everything familiar, no map, no guarantee, just a promise. And it was that obedience that birthed a nation. God doesn't bless comfort. He blesses obedience. When he tells you to move, move. When he tells you to stop, stop. And when he tells you to let go, release it. Because what's waiting on the other side of obedience is far greater than what you're afraid to lose. When God says let go, he's freeing you from what's holding you back. Some of us are tied to things that look good but aren't good for us. That relationship that drains you, that job that steals your peace, that habit that numbs your spirit. Those things can't go with you into the destiny God has prepared. You can't soar while carrying weights. You can't walk in freedom with chains still on your ankles. God loves you too much to let you stay bound. So when he says let go, he's not punishing you, he's positioning you. Sometimes the hardest release becomes the greatest relief. What you thought you needed was only blocking what God was trying to give. When God says let go, he's protecting you. There are things and people that seem good to us, but are not good for us. God sees what you can't see. The motives, the traps, the heartbreaks ahead. And out of love, he removes what would destroy you if you kept it. You might cry, you might question, you might not understand why the door closed so abruptly. But every divine no is guarding you from something that was never meant for your good. When you let go and trust that he sees beyond what you see, you begin to realize that protection sometimes comes disguised as disappointment. God's silence doesn't mean abandonment. It means he's shielding you from what could harm your soul. When God says let go, he's inviting you into transformation. Letting go is not just about leaving something behind. It's about becoming someone new. God can't elevate you while you're still holding on to the old version of yourself. You've got to release old mindsets, past failures, and the fear of not being enough. Transformation begins at the point of surrender. God reshapes your character, renews your vision, and rebuilds your strength when you stop clinging to what was and embrace what's coming. He's not trying to destroy who you are. He's refining you into who you were always meant to be. When God says let go, he's testing your faith. Faith isn't proven when everything makes sense. It's proven when nothing does. When God told Peter to step out of the boat, it wasn't logical. But miracles never happen in the comfort of the boat. They happen in the risk of obedience. God may be asking you to step into waters that look uncertain, to release control and trust his direction. The blessing is not in what you let go of. It's in the trust you display when you do. Faith that is never tested is faith that never grows. And the moment you let go, you discover that his hand was under yours all along, ready to catch, guide, and carry you. When God says let go, he's setting you up for a divine exchange. Every release in God leads to a replacement. You let go of fear, he gives peace. You let go of bitterness, he gives joy. You let go of your plan, he gives purpose. The process hurts because you're being stretched, but you can't pour new wine into old wineskins. What's ahead is too great to fit into what was. God never subtracts without adding. He never empties without filling. And he never asks for your trust without rewarding it. So even when it feels like you're losing, know that you're being led toward a greater gain, a deeper faith, a stronger spirit, a closer walk with him. When God says let go, he's preparing you for the promise. Every season of letting go is a setup for a new beginning. The pain of release is temporary, but the reward of obedience is eternal. You might not see the full picture yet, but God is writing a story that will make every loss make sense. What feels like an ending is often the introduction to your next chapter. Don't fight the process. Don't cling to what he's asking you to release. Trust the author who knows the end from the beginning. When you finally open your hands, you'll realize they were never empty. They were just making room for his best. So today, if God is saying, let go, don't resist, don't hesitate, don't look back, Because when you let go of what's temporary, you grab hold of what's eternal. And that's where freedom begins. When God says, let go, He's not speaking to hurt you. He's speaking to heal you. You see, we often grip things so tightly that our knuckles turn white. People, dreams, positions, habits, because we've convinced ourselves that without them, we can't survive. But what we don't realize is that the same thing we're clinging to can become the very thing suffocating us. God's voice doesn't come to steal our joy, it comes to redirect it. When He says, let go, it's because what you're holding has already served its purpose. It may have been good for a season, but not every season is meant to last forever. And sometimes the hardest thing to accept is that what once helped you grow can later hold you back. Letting go requires trust. The kind of trust that doesn't demand explanations. We love control. We love knowing what's next. But God's ways are not our ways, and His timing doesn't always align with our calendar. When He tells you to release something, it's not a suggestion. It's a divine invitation to step into a greater level of faith. God doesn't need your understanding to work His plan. He needs your obedience. You might be standing on the edge of something new, but you're still clutching what's old, wondering if you can carry both. The truth is, you can't. You can't take hold of the new thing God wants to do while your hands are still wrapped around what He's trying to remove. When God says let go, He's calling you to trust Him beyond your senses. You may not see what's next. You may not feel ready, but you have to believe that His voice leads to victory. The children of Israel had to let go of Egypt before they could ever see the promised land. Egypt was familiar. The food, the land, the people, but it was also bondage. God doesn't free you to leave you wandering. He frees you to lead you into promise. But the process of letting go means leaving the comfort of what you've known for the uncertainty of what's ahead. That's where faith is born. In the gap between release and reward. Sometimes God will shake your life, not because He's angry, but because you've settled. You've gotten comfortable in a place that was only meant to be temporary. He'll close doors you were trying to keep open. He'll remove people you thought would always be there. He'll even dry up resources you've depended on, not to punish you, but to push you into purpose. Because as long as you're comfortable in the familiar, you'll never reach for what's greater. Letting go is God's way of freeing your faith from the cage of predictability. He's saying, stop trying to understand it and just trust that I've got you. When God says let go, He's not asking for your permission. He's asking for your participation. Too often, we treat His instruction like a suggestion, something to be weighed or debated. But the voice of God is not a negotiator, it's a commander. He's not trying to rob you, He's trying to refine you. If you only knew what was waiting on the other side of obedience, you'd stop clinging to what's fading. That relationship that ended, you thought it was rejection, but it was redirection. That door that closed, you thought it was failure, but it was protection. God never asks you to release something without already preparing something better. But you can't see it if you're still staring at what you lost. Letting go also exposes what you truly believe about God. You can say you trust Him all day long, but trust isn't proven in the light. It's proven in the dark. When you can't trace His hand, can you still trust His heart? When you don't understand His plan, can you still believe He's good? Letting go will always test your theology. It will reveal whether your faith is built on convenience or conviction. And if you choose faith, you'll discover that surrender is not defeat. It's power. It's the moment you say, God, I don't know what you're doing, but I know you don't make mistakes. That's where peace lies. Not in having all the answers, but in trusting the one who does. Sometimes, the thing you're afraid to let go of is the very thing God's been trying to remove for your good. He knows the future you don't see. He knows the conversations you didn't hear. He knows the motives behind the smiles. And when He says let go, it's because He's seen something you haven't. It's not rejection, it's revelation. He's revealing what was never meant to stay. You might feel like everything is falling apart, but in reality, everything is falling into place. Because when God tells you to release something, He's not taking, He's trading. He's exchanging temporary comfort for eternal calling. And yes, it hurts. Letting go will stretch you. It will break your heart sometimes. But that breaking is also a blessing because it's in the breaking that God can finally build. When your hands are empty, your heart is open. When you stop clinging to the old, you create space for the new. God can't pour fresh oil into a vessel that's already full of yesterday's residue. You've got to empty yourself to be filled again. Letting go is not the end, it's the beginning of restoration. It's the moment when your will aligns with His and you stop fighting against what He's trying to fix. So when God says let go, don't resist. Release your grip. Surrender your fear. Trust His timing, because you might lose what you thought you needed, but you'll gain what you were made for. God never asks for your sacrifice without having resurrection on His mind. He's not calling you to let go to leave you empty. He's calling you to let go so He can bless you beyond what you can imagine. And when you finally obey, you'll look back one day and realize that what you let go of was never meant to stay. It was simply making room for the miracle that was waiting to begin. When God says let go, He's calling you into obedience. That call often comes when everything inside you wants to hold on, when logic and comfort beg you to stay right where you are. Obedience to God rarely makes sense in the moment. It doesn't fit neatly into your plans or your reasoning. But obedience isn't about understanding. It's about trusting. It's about saying, Lord, even when I don't see it, I'll follow you. God doesn't always explain Himself before He moves. He expects your faith to move first. That's the essence of obedience. Stepping when you don't have the full picture, trusting that His plan is greater than your understanding. Think about how many times in Scripture God asked someone to obey before revealing the outcome. When He told Noah to build an ark, it had never rained like that before. Noah didn't have a forecast, he had a word. When He told Abraham to leave his homeland, there was no map, no destination in sight, just a command and a promise. These men didn't obey because they understood, they obeyed because they trusted the one who spoke. That's the kind of faith that moves heaven. God's blessings don't come through comfort. They come through compliance with His word. Obedience opens doors that logic never could. The challenge for most of us is that we like to be in control. We like to calculate outcomes and measure risks. But God doesn't operate on our human systems. He doesn't need your control. He needs your surrender. When He tells you to let go, it's not up for debate. It's not something you get to negotiate on your own timeline. Obedience means moving even when your emotions are still catching up. It means releasing what you can't control so God can handle what you never could. If you wait until you feel ready, you'll never move. Faith doesn't wait for perfect timing. It creates it. The truth is, delayed obedience is still disobedience. Some of us hear God say, let go, but we keep trying to manage what He's already told us to release. We make excuses. I just need more confirmation, or I'll let go when it feels right. But God doesn't bless hesitation. Every time you delay, you're choosing comfort over calling. Every time you resist, you're saying that your plan is safer than His purpose. Obedience means you move even when it's uncomfortable, even when it hurts, even when it doesn't make sense. Because faith without movement is just talk, and God doesn't respond to talk. He responds to trust. When God calls you to let go, He's testing your loyalty. Are you more loyal to what He gave you than to the one who gave it? Sometimes the blessing becomes the barrier. You start worshiping the gift instead of the giver. You hold on so tightly to what you prayed for that you forget who answered the prayer. That's why God will often test your obedience by asking you to release something He once blessed you with. It's not because He wants to hurt you. It's because He wants to know if He still has your heart. When Abraham raised the knife over Isaac, it wasn't about sacrifice. It was about trust. God didn't want Isaac. He wanted Abraham's obedience. And once that obedience was proven, God provided something greater in return. Obedience also means learning to move at God's pace, not your own. Sometimes He'll ask you to let go suddenly, without time to prepare, without the comfort of transition. It can feel like your whole world is shifting beneath your feet. But remember, you serve a God who never wastes movement. Every command He gives has purpose behind it. You might not see it now, but every step of obedience plants a seed for a future harvest. You may cry, you may question, but obedience is what carries you into destiny. The wilderness of uncertainty is where faith is proven, and obedience is the bridge that carries you through it. You can't say you trust God if you're unwilling to obey Him. Trust isn't a feeling, it's an action. It's a decision that says, God, I believe You know better than I do. Obedience is not always glamorous. Sometimes it's lonely, misunderstood, and painful. But every time you obey, you align yourself with divine timing. You may not get the applause of people, but you'll get the approval of heaven. And one act of obedience can change your entire life. When you let go of what He asked you to, you make space for the supernatural. The same hands that release are the same hands that will receive. It's also important to understand that obedience brings peace. When you resist God, your spirit becomes restless. You lose sleep, you lose joy, because disobedience creates inner conflict. But when you finally obey, even if the outcome isn't clear, peace will rush in like a river. Peace is the confirmation that you've done what God asked. The storm outside may still rage, but there will be calm within you. That's what happens when your will aligns with His. You stop fighting the current and start flowing with His direction. Obedience is not about perfection, it's about posture. God knows you won't get everything right, but He's looking for a heart that says yes, a heart that's willing to trust, to follow, to move. Because when you say yes to God, you give Him permission to rewrite your story. You open doors that were locked by fear and hesitation. You invite favor into places that once carried frustration. The moment you choose obedience, heaven moves on your behalf. So when God says, let go, don't question it, obey it. You might not see the full picture now, but one day you'll look back and realize that every act of obedience was a step toward destiny. You'll understand that what you released was never loss, it was preparation. Because in the kingdom of God, obedience is the currency of blessing. And when you spend it, you never come up empty. God honors those who trust His voice above their feelings. The path may be uncertain, but the promise is sure. If you obey, He will always lead you to better. When God says let go, He's freeing you from what's holding you back. Sometimes we can't see the weight we're carrying because we've gotten used to it. We've normalized pain. We've adapted to dysfunction. We've learned to live with what should have been left behind long ago. God sees how the things we cling to, relationships, habits, fears, regrets, are silently draining the strength He gave us for the journey ahead. When He says let go, He's not trying to take away your comfort. He's trying to remove your chains. The problem is, we often confuse bondage for belonging. We get attached to what's familiar, even when it's unhealthy, and God has to step in and break what's been breaking us. Letting go is not loss, it's liberation. Sometimes, God will allow a disruption to show you what you've been holding onto too tightly. He'll shake what's unstable, not to destroy you, but to detach you. Because as long as your hands are gripping the past, they're too full to receive the future. You can't carry both your pain and His promise. You can't hold on to what broke you and still expect to walk in freedom. God doesn't want you surviving on scraps when He's prepared a feast. But you'll never taste what He's offering if you keep clinging to what's already expired. Some people, some seasons, and some habits were only meant to take you partway. You can't keep dragging dead weight into living seasons. Letting go doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you stop controlling. It means you stop trying to fix what God already closed. Stop trying to resurrect what God buried. There are people and places that once felt like blessings, but have now turned into burdens, not because they were bad, but because their time in your life is over. God loves you too much to let you settle in something that no longer aligns with your destiny. The longer you hold on, the heavier it becomes, until one day the very thing you love begins to crush you. Freedom doesn't always feel like joy at first. It often feels like grief. But that grief is proof that something is leaving so something greater can come. There's a story in every person's life where God had to force a release. Maybe He ended a friendship you never thought would break, or a job you thought you'd retire from, or a plan that once gave you direction. In the moment, it felt like rejection. But later, you realized it was protection. God saw what you couldn't see. He knew that keeping you there would limit what He wanted to do through you. The walls that once sheltered you can also suffocate you if you stay too long. That's why sometimes He has to shut a door so tightly that you can't reopen it. Because if He left it ajar, you'd keep running back to what He's already delivered you from. When God frees you, it's not just from external things, it's also from internal ones. You may need to let go of guilt, shame, anger, and fear. You can't walk forward while looking backward. You can't embrace grace while holding on to guilt. Some of us keep replaying the same mistakes, punishing ourselves for things God has already forgiven. But freedom requires forgiveness, both from God and toward yourself. You can't keep chaining yourself to who you used to be and expect to walk in who God is calling you to become. The enemy thrives on your attachment to old pain. He knows if you keep holding on to the past, you'll never step into your purpose. But once you let go, once you release that hurt into God's hands, you'll feel lighter, stronger, freer than you ever imagined. Sometimes what's holding you back isn't something external. It's your own comfort. We grow so used to certain patterns that they start to feel safe, even when they're slowly destroying us. God calls you out of the familiar because the familiar can become a cage. You can't grow where you're not challenged. So when God says let go, He's saying, I've got something more for you, but you can't reach it if you stay where you are. You've been praying for elevation, but elevation requires separation. You can't climb higher while clinging to the things that keep you grounded. That's why letting go is not punishment, it's preparation. When God sets you free, He doesn't just remove what's holding you, He renews what's within you. Freedom changes how you see, how you speak, how you think. It gives you space to breathe again. It restores joy that sorrow tried to steal. It restores confidence that fear tried to destroy. But it all begins with release. God can't heal what you won't hand over. You can pray for change all day long, but if you're still clinging to what He told you to let go, you're choosing captivity. Real freedom comes when you say, God, I'm done fighting you. I'm done carrying what's crushing me. Take it. I trust you with it. That's the moment the chains fall. Letting go will always cost you something, but what you gain is worth far more. You might lose some people, some comfort, even some sense of control, but you'll gain peace. You'll gain clarity. You'll gain strength you didn't know you had. You'll start to see how God was using every heartbreak to make you whole, how He was removing distractions to help you focus on destiny. Freedom is rarely neat. It's messy. It's emotional, but it's also holy. Because when you let go of what's hindering you, you make room for God to do what only He can do. So when God says let go, He's not trying to take away your life. He's trying to give it back to you. He's breaking the grip of what's been draining your joy and blocking your purpose. He's saying, I've got more for you, but you can't carry it if your hands are still full of yesterday. The same hands that release will soon rise in praise. The same tears that fell in loss will become tears of joy. Freedom may start with pain, but it ends in peace. And once you've truly let go, you'll realize the thing you were afraid to lose was never holding you up. God was. When God says let go, He's protecting you. That's something we don't always recognize in the moment because protection doesn't always feel like safety. It often feels like loss. When God removes something or someone from your life, it can feel like your heart is being torn apart. But what you call rejection, God calls redirection. What feels like heartbreak is often a form of divine shielding. He sees what's ahead, what's hidden, what you can't possibly perceive. You see a person or an opportunity, He sees the outcome. You see a door that looks promising, He sees the trap behind it. And because He loves you too deeply to let you fall into destruction, He'll close that door, even if it breaks your heart to watch it shut. Sometimes protection from God looks like unanswered prayers. You asked for that relationship to work, but it fell apart. You asked for that job, but they didn't hire you. You prayed for that deal, but it collapsed at the last minute. And you cried, you questioned, you wondered if God forgot about you. But in reality, He was protecting you from something you didn't see. You wanted the short-term comfort, but He wanted your long-term peace. You wanted immediate satisfaction, but He wanted eternal stability. God knows how to save you from what would silently sabotage your purpose. He's not withholding out of cruelty. He's guarding you out of compassion. We often mistake protection for punishment because we measure God's goodness by what He gives us, not by what He keeps from us. We think blessings are only in the yes, but sometimes the greatest blessings are hidden in His no. That person you thought you needed might have been the one who would have destroyed your spirit. That opportunity you were desperate for might have led you away from His will. God's no is not rejection. It's direction. It's His way of saying, I see what you can't see, and I'm saving you from pain you don't need to experience. So, when He tells you to let go, it's not because He's angry, it's because He's aware. He knows the outcome of every road before you take the first step, and He's committed to guiding you toward the one that leads to life. There are times when God's protection feels like confusion. You're standing there wondering why something that seemed so right suddenly went so wrong. You thought this was the door He wanted you to walk through, and then, out of nowhere, it slammed shut. You replay the moments, the conversations, the signs, trying to figure out what went wrong. But sometimes nothing went wrong at all. It just wasn't God's will. His silence in those moments isn't absence, it's a shield. When He removes something, it's not because He's forgotten you. It's because He's fighting for you behind the scenes. The hand that closes a door is the same hand that's building the next one. Protection also comes in the form of separation. God will sometimes distance you from people who don't have your best interest at heart. even when they look like they do. He'll pull you away from environments that seem harmless but are quietly toxic to your spirit. He'll even let you feel uncomfortable in places where you've grown too content, not because he wants to isolate you, but because he wants to insulate you. He knows that where you are isn't where you're meant to stay. And if you don't move willingly, he'll move you mercifully. That discomfort you feel isn't punishment. It's preparation. It's God's way of nudging you toward purpose while keeping you safe from what could destroy it. When God protects you, he doesn't always announce it. You may never know the danger he saved you from, the betrayal he blocked, or the disaster he diverted. You just know that something didn't go the way you planned and you were forced to let go. But one day, looking back, you'll see his fingerprints all over that moment. You'll realize that the thing that didn't work out was one of the best things that ever happened to you. You'll see how what felt like loss was actually the foundation for your next blessing. God's protection is often quiet, but it's never absent. Even when you can't see his hand, you can trust his heart. And sometimes his protection requires pruning. God will cut away relationships, habits, and attachments that you've outgrown because he knows they're limiting your growth. You might not understand why he's taking things away when you've worked so hard for them, but pruning is proof of potential. A gardener only cuts what he plans to grow. So when God removes something from your life, it's because he's preparing you to bear more fruit. He's protecting your destiny from decay. He's ensuring that nothing unhealthy takes root in the soil of your soul. The cutting hurts, but the harvest is coming. You see, protection doesn't always mean safety from pain. It means safety through pain. God never promised that obedience would be painless, but he promised it would be purposeful. The same hand that takes away is the hand that heals. The same voice that says, let go, is the voice that says, I'll never leave you. You may not understand his methods, but you can trust his motives. Everything he does out of love. And that love refuses to let you walk into something that could break you beyond repair. So when you feel like God is stripping things from your life, remember this. He's not leaving you vulnerable. He's making you victorious. The things and people he removes were never meant to carry the weight of your destiny. He's protecting your heart, your peace, your purpose. He's building a wall around your future and a shield around your soul. You might not see it now, but there's safety in surrender. Because when God says, let go, he's not closing the door to hurt you. He's closing it to save you. He's pulling you back from danger you didn't even know existed. And one day, you'll thank him, not for what he gave, but for what he kept from ever touching you. When God says let go, he's inviting you into transformation. Letting go isn't just about releasing what's in your hands. It's about allowing God to reshape what's in your heart. Transformation is never comfortable because it requires change, and change means something old has to die for something new to live. We like to pray for God to change our situation, but most of the time he's trying to change us first. The moment he tells you to let go, it's not about loss, it's about becoming. He's saying, I can't bring you into who you're meant to be if you're still attached to who you were. Transformation starts the moment you stop clinging to the past and open yourself to the process of renewal. God cannot elevate what you refuse to release. Many of us are praying for a new level while holding on to old habits, old thinking, and old pain. But you can't carry yesterday's baggage into tomorrow's blessing. You can't step into a new season with an old mindset. Letting go isn't just about people or things. It's about the version of yourself that no longer fits where God is taking you. You might have been strong in one season, but the strength you need now looks different. God is trying to stretch you, to refine you, to mature you, but that process will demand that you shade your old skin. Growth always begins with release. When God invites you into transformation, he's not trying to erase your identity. He's refining your purpose. He wants to take the raw material of your life and shape it into something that reflects his glory. But transformation can't happen in comfort. The caterpillar doesn't become a butterfly without entering the cocoon. It has to go through isolation, restriction, and stillness before its wings can form. The same is true for you. God will often pull you into seasons where he strips away distractions, closes doors, and silences noise, not to punish you, but to transform you. In that stillness, he's molding your character. In that waiting, he's building your faith. What feels like loss is really preparation for flight. The hardest part of transformation is surrender. We say we want God to take control, but we still want to hold the wheel. We want change without release, progress without process, and growth without pruning. But God doesn't transform you on your terms, He does it on His. He'll ask you to trust Him with the parts of your life you'd rather manage yourself. He'll touch areas you've kept guarded for years, your fears, your insecurities, your desires, and say, "Give it to me." And when you finally release it, you'll realize that surrender isn't defeat. It's deliverance. It's the moment you stop resisting the work God's trying to do inside you. Transformation also requires faith because it doesn't happen instantly. There's a period between who you were and who you're becoming that feels uncertain. You're not where you used to be, but you're not yet where you're going. That in-between space is where many people give up, thinking God has forgotten them. But that's where He's working the most. He's breaking old patterns, healing deep wounds, and renewing your mind. You may not see it, but every tear, every struggle, every moment of waiting is shaping you into the person He called you to be. Transformation is slow, but it's sacred. God's not in a hurry to change you. He's intent on perfecting you. Sometimes transformation requires isolation. God will separate you from people and places that no longer serve your destiny. It's not rejection. It's redirection. He's not trying to make you lonely. He's trying to make you holy. You can't transform while surrounded by voices that keep you tied to your old self. So when He removes people or creates distance, don't fight it. The cocoon always feels lonely, but it's in the cocoon that wings are formed. You can't fly if you're surrounded by those who only understand your crawling. Letting go of the wrong environment is necessary for transformation to take root. And when God begins transforming you, He doesn't just change your circumstances, He changes your vision. You start seeing things differently. What used to attract you doesn't anymore. What used to break you doesn't hold the same power. You begin to value peace over popularity, purpose over applause, and calling over comfort. That's the beauty of transformation. It shifts your appetite. God renews your mind so your desires align with His will. The very things you once chased, you now see were distractions. The very pain that once crushed you becomes the testimony that fuels your strength. You don't just survive transformation, you evolve through it. Transformation also teaches you to trust the timing of God. You can't rush a process that's meant to refine you. You can't microwave spiritual growth. Every delay, every disappointment, every detour is shaping something within you. When God says let go, it's because He's about to rebuild you from the inside out. He's teaching you patience, dependence, and endurance. He's teaching you to stop measuring your progress by visible results and start trusting His unseen hand. You may not recognize it now, but transformation is never wasted time. It's preparation time. Eventually, the moment will come when you look back and realize that letting go was the best thing that ever happened to you. You'll see how the pain that once felt unbearable became the doorway to purpose. You'll see how God used every broken piece to build something stronger in you. You'll realize that you didn't lose yourself in the process. You found who you were always meant to be. Transformation is not about becoming someone new. It's about revealing who you've been beneath the weight of what you were never meant to carry. So when God says let go, don't resist the change. Don't fear the process. Trust that He's not trying to destroy you. He's trying to develop you. The fire that's refining you today is the same fire that will empower you tomorrow. The version of you that emerges from this process will be wiser, stronger, and more aligned with His will. Transformation isn't about the end result. It's about the relationship you build with God along the way. Because in the end, letting go doesn't just change your life. It changes you. When God says let go, He's also saying trust me in the unknown. It's easy to have faith when everything makes sense, when the path is clear and the destination is visible. But the real test of faith begins when God calls you to walk through uncertainty. When He asks you to step out of what's familiar into what's unseen. That's where trust becomes more than words. It becomes a lifestyle. God doesn't always reveal the full picture because if He did, you'd rely on your understanding instead of His wisdom. Faith thrives in the fog. Trust grows in the dark. The unknown is not your enemy. It's the environment where faith is proven genuine. When God told Abraham to leave his home and go to a land He would show him, Abraham didn't get a map, a timeline, or an explanation. He got a word. That's it. And that word was enough because it came from God. When God says let go, He may not tell you what's next, but He's telling you who's with you. And when you know who's with you, you don't have to fear where you're going. The unknown only feels terrifying when you forget that the author of your story is the same one who holds tomorrow in His hands. You might not know the next step, but God knows the entire journey. The reason God often leads you through uncertainty is because He's teaching you dependence. When everything is predictable, you start relying on patterns, routines, and logic. But when God disrupts your rhythm, it's to remind you that your security should never be in the plan. It should be in His presence. You might be walking through a season right now where you don't know what's next. Your finances are uncertain, relationships are changing, opportunities are unclear. But even in that, God is whispering, do you trust me? Not trust the outcome, not trust your ability to fix it, but trust me. Because trust isn't proven when things are comfortable, it's proven when everything feels unstable. Sometimes God will allow confusion to clear your vision. When you can't see your way forward, you're forced to listen more closely to His voice. He'll close doors you were counting on just to redirect you toward the door He intended. You'll think something failed, but in heaven's perspective, it was protection. God never wastes uncertainty. He uses it as a classroom for spiritual maturity. He wants you to learn how to walk by faith, not by sight, because faith isn't about understanding every detail. It's about obeying even when the details don't make sense. And make no mistake, trusting God in the unknown isn't passive. It's active surrender. It's saying, God, I don't know what you're doing, but I know you're good. It's choosing peace over panic, worship over worry, and patience over pressure. When you trust God in the dark, you're declaring that His character is consistent even when your circumstances aren't. You're saying, even if I can't trace your hand, I'll trust your heart. That kind of faith moves mountains. That kind of trust opens doors that logic could never unlock. We often think faith is about believing for the miraculous, but sometimes faith is about staying steady when nothing miraculous seems to be happening. It's about holding on when everything in you wants to let go. It's about choosing to believe that God's silence doesn't mean His absence. Some of the most powerful work God does in your life happens when He's quiet. The silence isn't punishment, it's preparation. He's developing your spiritual muscles, strengthening your endurance, and teaching you to listen beyond the noise of your emotions. Because trust that only survives in comfort isn't real trust. There's a story told through every storm you faced, and it's this: God has never failed you. Look back over your life. Every time you thought you were finished, He made a way. Every time you thought it was over, He proved it wasn't. Every time you couldn't see a path, He carved one through the wilderness. That same God hasn't changed. So when He calls you into the unknown, remember His track record. The God who carried you before will carry you again. The God who provided then will provide now. His faithfulness didn't stop when the situation got hard. It shines brightest there. Trusting God in the unknown also means letting go of your need for control. Control feels safe because it gives the illusion of certainty, but it's also the greatest enemy of trust. You can't hold the pen and let God write the story at the same time. Sometimes He'll deliberately take you through situations you can't fix to teach you that He's the only one who can. He's saying, I don't need your strategy, I need your surrender. You're not meant to understand everything. Some things are meant to stretch your faith, not satisfy your logic. And when fear starts whispering in your ear, reminding you of everything that could go wrong, remember this: God has already gone ahead of you. He's in your tomorrow waiting for your arrival. He's preparing blessings, aligning opportunities, and removing obstacles you don't even know exist. You're not stepping into the unknown, you're stepping into what He's already secured. The unknown is only unknown to you, not to Him. That's why you can walk forward with confidence even when you can't see the next step, because your steps are ordered by the Lord. Sometimes God will strip away every visible support so that the only thing left to lean on is Him. That's when you discover that His strength is enough. You realize that peace isn't the absence of uncertainty. It's the presence of God in the middle of it. You learn that trust isn't a feeling, it's a decision. You choose to believe even when you don't feel brave. You choose to keep moving even when the road is unclear. Because trust says, God, I don't know where this is leading, but I know who's leading me. So if God is asking you to let go and step into the unknown, don't be afraid. He's not trying to confuse you. He's inviting you into deeper intimacy with Him. The unknown is not your punishment, it's your promotion. It's the space where God proves that His promises are real. It's where He turns uncertainty into testimony and chaos into clarity. The same God who called you into the unknown will meet you there. He's not sending you alone. He's walking with you, guiding you, and carrying you through every step of the journey. When God says let go, He's not only calling you to release what's behind, you're being called to step into destiny. Destiny isn't a random destination or a product of luck. It's the divine design of your life, written by the hand of God long before you were born. But the path to destiny always runs through surrender. You cannot hold on to the familiar and walk into the future God prepared for you at the same time. There comes a moment when God says, now it's time to move. And in that moment, obedience becomes the doorway to purpose. God's calling isn't about comfort, it's about completion. He's not trying to take something from you, He's trying to bring something out of you. When you finally let go of what was, you make space for what's meant to be. Too many people miss their destiny because they stay attached to what feels safe. They want God's promise, but cling to their past security. But you can't reach for what's in front of you while your hands are still holding what's behind you. Destiny demands separation. There will be times when God calls you to walk away from circles, systems, and situations that no longer fit your calling. It won't make sense to others. That's because your assignment isn't theirs. When God calls you into destiny, He's separating you for a greater purpose, not isolating you for punishment. Stepping into destiny requires courage because it means walking by faith, not familiarity. Every person God used powerfully in Scripture had to leave something behind. Abraham had to leave his country. Moses had to leave Egypt. Ruth had to leave Moab. Peter had to leave his nets. And Jesus had to leave heaven to fulfill his mission on earth. Every act of destiny starts with a step of obedience. God is saying, if you trust me enough to let go, I'll lead you into something that exceeds what you imagined. But as long as fear dictates your movement, you'll stay stuck in places God has already called you out of. Faith is the vehicle that drives you toward destiny. Destiny doesn't unfold all at once. It's revealed step by step. God rarely gives you the full picture because He's not trying to impress you. He's trying to train you. Each step of obedience opens the next door. Sometimes you won't know what's next until you move. Too many people are waiting for clarity before they act, but clarity comes through movement. God doesn't guide the park. If you wait for everything to make sense before you obey, you'll miss the miracles hidden in motion. The moment you say yes, heaven begins to align the details you can't see. That's how destiny works. It responds to faith, not fear. Destiny also demands endurance. The path isn't always straight. Sometimes it wins through delay, disappointment, and detours. But delay is not denial. The detour doesn't mean the destination is canceled. It means God is building your strength for the weight of the promise. Every struggle, every closed door, every heartbreak is shaping you for the place you're being called to occupy. Destiny doesn't just require faith, it requires formation. You have to become the person who can handle the blessing you've been praying for. God will use challenges to prepare your character because destiny without maturity can become destruction. So don't resent the process. It's part of your preparation. There's also a divine timing to destiny. You can't force what God has scheduled. You might be ready in your mind, but God is waiting for alignment in your spirit. If you arrive too early, the blessing can break you. If you wait too long, you can miss your window. That's why obedience is so critical. You have to move when God says move, even if it doesn't look logical. God's timing rarely aligns with human calendars, but it's always perfect. When He says let go, it's because the next season is already ready for you. You just have to trust His timing enough to take the leap. Destiny also comes with spiritual opposition. The moment you decide to walk into your purpose, expect resistance. The enemy doesn't fight what isn't a threat. The attacks intensify not because you're failing, but because you're close to fulfilling what you were created for. That's why you can't interpret warfare as rejection. It's confirmation that you're moving in the right direction. You might lose people, opportunities, or comfort along the way, but those losses are part of the refining fire. God is removing what can't go where you're going. Don't mourn what He's pruning. Celebrate that He's positioning you. As you walk into destiny, you'll also discover that what God has for you is always bigger than you. Destiny isn't about personal success. It's about divine impact. It's not just about what you achieve, but about who you become and how God uses your life to influence others. When you let go and follow His call, you become a vessel through which His power and purpose flow. Your story becomes a testimony that inspires faith in others. The blessing God gives you isn't meant to stop with you. It's meant to flow through you. That's how destiny works. It's personal in calling, but generational in impact. And when you finally step into that place, when you realize you've walked out of what was and into what's been waiting, you'll see why God made you let go. You'll look back and thank Him for every door that closed, every relationship that ended, every detour that delayed you, because they were all directing you to this divine moment. You'll understand that His no was protection, His silence was instruction, and His timing was perfection. Destiny doesn't come to those who fight to control. It comes to those who choose to trust. So when God says let go, don't cling to the past, step into the promise. Don't fear what's next. Walk in faith that the one who called you is faithful to finish what He started. Your destiny isn't waiting in the comfort of what was, it's calling from the horizon of what's to come. You're not losing when you let go. You're stepping into everything God designed for you before time began. Destiny is not a place you find. It's a person you become when you trust God enough to release what's behind and reach for what's ahead. And when you do, you'll discover that the very act of letting go was the beginning of everything you were born to walk into. When God says let go, He's not just asking you to release something from your hands. He's calling you to step into your destiny. Destiny is not a random sequence of events or a product of coincidence. It is the divine blueprint of your life, designed by God before you even took your first breath. But that destiny can't unfold until you release what's keeping you tied to where you've been. God doesn't want to just deliver you from something. He wants to deliver you to something. And the only way to step into that is by letting go of the from. The problem is, we often cling to what feels safe, even when it's no longer serving our growth. We stay in relationships that drain us, environments that limit us, and mindsets that bind us because they're familiar. But familiarity can become a cage when God has called you to fly. The call to destiny is a call to movement, and movement requires release. When God told Abraham to leave his homeland, He didn't give him the details of where he was going. He simply said, go. Abraham's willingness to step into the unknown was the act that unlocked his destiny. In the same way, God won't always show you every detail before He calls you to move. He won't give you the whole map because if you could see it all, you wouldn't need faith. Destiny is discovered step by step, not all at once. Each act of obedience opens a new door, reveals a new piece of the plan, and draws you closer to the life you were designed to live. You can't pray for divine direction and then ignore the divine instruction that comes with it. God doesn't guide those who are idle. He guides those who are willing to walk even when the road is unclear. But walking into destiny requires courage. You can't step into something new while holding on to what's old. You can't enter the promise while clinging to Egypt. Every great move of God begins with separation. Moses had to leave the palace before he could lead the people. Ruth had to leave Moab before she could meet Boaz. Peter had to drop his nets before he could follow Jesus. The calling of God will always cost you something, but the reward is always greater than the sacrifice. The people, habits, and comforts that feel essential in one season can become obstacles in the next. Letting go doesn't mean you're losing. It means you're aligning. It's the evidence that you trust God's plan more than your own. Sometimes God will delay your destiny not because He's denying you, but because He's developing you. He knows that where He's taking you requires a stronger, wiser, and more mature version of you. The waiting season isn't wasted. It's preparation. David was anointed as king, but he still had to go back to tending sheep before he sat on the throne. Joseph had dreams of leadership, but he had to endure the pit and the prison before reaching the palace. Those seasons of struggle weren't punishment, they were training grounds. God was teaching them how to handle the weight of what was coming. Destiny without development can destroy you. That's why He allows process before promotion. The fire you're walking through isn't meant to consume you. It's meant to refine you. As you move closer to destiny, you'll encounter opposition. That's not a sign you're off course. It's a confirmation that you're on it. The enemy doesn't fight people who pose no threat. The pressure increases when purpose is near. When doors close, people walk away, or plans fall apart. It's easy to question if you heard God correctly. But sometimes His protection feels like rejection. He's not trying to hurt you. He's making sure nothing attaches to you that can't survive in your next season. The warfare around you is proof of the calling within you. Don't give up when it gets hard. The storm isn't there to stop you. It's there to strengthen you for what's ahead. Walking in destiny also means learning to trust God's timing. We live in a culture that celebrates instant gratification. But divine timing doesn't operate on your calendar. You can't rush what God is refining. The promise still stands even if it's taking longer than you expected. Every delay has purpose. Sometimes He's not waiting to prepare the blessing. He's waiting to prepare you. You have to be positioned properly to receive what He's already ordained. If He gave it too soon, you might mishandle it. If He gave it too late, you might move without faith. That's why your obedience in every small step matters. Each step is part of a divine sequence that's leading you to your appointed place. Destiny is not just about success. It's about significance. It's not about climbing to the top. It's about fulfilling your divine assignment. God didn't design you to simply exist. He designed you to impact lives, to be a reflection of His glory in the earth. When you let go of your own plans and surrender to His, He uses your story to bring others closer to Him. The pain you endured becomes the testimony that inspires others. The lessons you learned in the dark become the light that guides someone else. Destiny isn't about what you achieve. It's about who you become in the process and how God uses your transformation to touch others. And one day, when you finally arrive at the place God has been leading you, you'll look back and realize that everything made sense. The disappointments, the delays, the heartbreaks, the detours, all of it was necessary. You'll see how every no protected you from the wrong doors, how every loss made room for greater gain, how every setback was actually a setup. You'll thank God not just for the blessings, but for the breaks that redirected you. Because in hindsight, you'll understand that when God said, let go, He wasn't taking something from you. He was trying to take you somewhere. That's the beauty of destiny. It's not a destination you arrive at. It's a divine journey of faith, surrender, and transformation. Every act of letting go is an act of trust. Every moment of obedience draws you closer to the person you were born to become. You're not losing anything by letting go. You're gaining everything God always intended for you to have. So when He says, let go, lift your hands, release your fears, and take that step forward. Because your destiny isn't waiting in your comfort zone. It's waiting in your surrender.